Hello and thanks for watching Best Maths Tutors. I'm continuing to go through algebra, and this week we're going to cover substitution. So I hope you find this helpful, and if you do enjoy our videos, please consider subscribing to our channel. So substitution is when we have an algebraic expression or an equation and we replace the value of a letter by a number. Because basically when we've got algebra, that's what we are doing. We're using letters to represent numbers. So I've got quite a few examples here where I'm going from simple examples up to more difficult ones. And I'd recommend that you stop the video at various points and try the questions yourself and see if you get the right answers. So this first one, we've got an algebraic expression here. We know it's an algebraic expression because there's no equals involved. So it's just an expression in algebra. And we're given the value of a, and so we've got to find the value of 2a plus 3. So the method for doing this is to rewrite the expression, only replacing the letter by the number that we know that it is. So we're told that a is 8. So I'm going to rewrite this. Now I'm going to say it's 2 times, and then instead of the a, I'm going to write 8, and then plus 3, and just work out the value of that. So 2 times 8 is 16, plus 3 is equal to 19. So that's the first one done. So we can see all we did there was just replacing the letter by the value of the number. And also I should point out that if we've got 2a, that's shorthand, that means 2 times a. So that's sometimes not obvious, but if we've got a number and a letter next to each other, that actually means we're multiplying them together. So in the next example, I've got a slightly more difficult one. So we've got, this time it's a formula to find the value of c, and we're told that c is equal to 6 times whatever the value of d is, minus 4 times the value of whatever a is. So we're going to use the same approach as in example 1. What we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it, but replace the value of d by 9, and replace the value of a by 3. So I'm going to do that and say, so c is equal to 6 times, instead of writing d, I'm going to write 9, and then minus 4 times by 3. So I'm going to work that out. So 6 times 9 is going to be 54. Let's think about that for a second. 54. And then the rules of BIDMAS say we've got to do the times first. So BIDMAS, this is also an opportunity to look at what this means. BIDMAS tells us the order in which we do things. So the B stands for brackets, the I stands for indices, which is powers, D stands for divide, M stands for multiplication, A stands for addition, and S stands for subtraction. So because we've got both a subtraction there and a multiplication, because the multiplication is higher up than the subtraction, what we have to do is we have to do the multiplication first. So we just write the minus there, and then it's 4 times 3 is 12. And then we can do the takeaway. So what we've got to do is 54 take away 12, and that gives us 42. So I'm now going to look at one again, which is possibly slightly more difficult. And this one, we've got a negative sign in there as well. So I want to look at how we deal with that. So we've got g equals 3, we've got h equals 4, and we've got I is equal to negative 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write them in there. So this means g times whatever h is times whatever I is. So we're going to go 3, replacing the g, times the h, so that's times 4, and then times by, and when I've got a negative number there, like that minus 5, or negative 5 I should say, it's handy just to write that in a bracket. So it's telling us that we're multiplying the -5. So it's not telling us that we're taking away 5, it's just telling us that the value there is -5. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 3 times 4 is 12. So I'm going to do this as a step. 3 times 4 is 12. Then I'm going to go times -5. So if we know the rules of multiplication for signs, we know if we've got a positive times a positive, that would give us a positive result. If we had a positive times a negative, we actually get a negative result. If we have a negative times a positive, we still get a negative result. And if we have a negative times a negative, then we can get a positive result. So what we've got here, we've got a positive 12, even though it's not written there. We assume it's positive unless it tells us otherwise. So that's positive 12 times by -5. So we know the overall sign there is a positive times a negative, and that's going to give us a negative result. So we've got a negative result there. I'll just move the board up a little. We've got a negative result there, and 12 times 5 is 60. So that's our result there, -60. So looking at the next example now, this is actually an equation or formula for velocity. If, in case you're familiar with any of the physics equations that you might use, you may have heard of Suvat equations, which are to do with equations of motion. So when we've got things moving. If you've not heard of that, it doesn't actually matter because we're just going to substitute into this formula. But I was just giving it a little bit of background there. So we're trying to find the value of v, which in the case of Suvat, v would stand for velocity. And what we're given is u is equal to 6. U would stand for initial velocity in the Suvat, A would stand for acceleration, and T would stand for time. So we're going to put these values into this and find out what our value for V is. So we can just write V as it is and then replace each one of these letters by the number. So I'm going to say that U is 6, and then we've got plus, and I'm going to, because it's a negative number there, A is -2, I'm going to actually write in inside a little bracket -2 there, and then that's times by 4, which is the value of T. So I'm just going to work that out. So we've got, as we remember from before, when we looked at the BIDMAS, telling us the order in which to do things, we've got to do multiplication before we do either addition or subtraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the 6, and I'm not going to do the addition there. I'm going to multiply -2 by, this is +4. So I'm just going to keep that as a plus there for now. And -2 times +4 will actually give us -8. Negative times a positive, so we can see from this value here, negative times a positive gives us a negative. So the -2 times the 4 will give us -8. Now what we need to do is we need to decide what we're going to do with a positive, a plus, and a minus next to each other. So it follows the same rules actually as the times table thing that we've got here. You can think of this as a little table of how we deal with it. So if we have a positive and a positive next to each other, the answer would always be a positive. Positive and a negative, the answer would always be a negative. Negative and a positive would again give us a negative, and a negative and a negative, possibly somewhat surprisingly, gives us a positive. So if we have a negative sign next to a negative sign, it actually is a positive. Here we've got a positive and a negative next to each other, so that's this one, and they make overall a negative. So we've got 6 minus 8, and then we just need to work out the value of that. And To do that, we have to think of a number line, really. So think of a number line, 0 in the middle. So 6 was up there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I took away 8 from that 6, I'd actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into the negative, 8. And actually that's -2. So the answer to that one is -2. So looking at the next question, again, this is another one of the SUVAT equations. Don't worry if you don't know what that stands for. I'm just trying to give it a little bit of context in terms of where these equations are coming from. So S in the SUVAT stands for distance. So this equation would actually allow us to work out the distance that had been travelled if we knew what initial velocity was, which is u, if we knew what time was, and if we knew what acceleration was. So I'm going to again write these into this formula here. So I've got S is equal to, so u is 3 times by t, which again is 3. And then we've got plus a half times by the value of a. Now I'd just like to put that in a little bracket because it's negative. And then times by 3 squared. So what we've got is a lot of different things to do here, and we can actually go through the BIDMAS list here, and we can see that indices is the top one. So we could actually just go through and simplify the indices bit, which is the power on the 3. So I might, if I'm being very careful, just keep everything as it is, and so that's times -4, and just work out the value of 3 squared. Well, 3 squared means 3 times 3. So the 2 tells us how many times to multiply it by itself, and that will give us 9. So that's times by 9. So the next thing I'm going to do is, on the BIDMAS list, the next thing we could do was any multiplication. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to work out 3 times 3 is 9, and then we're going to add to it the result of half times -4 times 9. So half times -4 would actually give us, half of 4 is 2, but because it's a positive times a negative, it's going to be -2. I'm going to put this in as a step. So the half times the -4 will give us -2, and that's still times by 9. And then I'm going to write this again. 9 plus -2 times 9 is actually -18. Minus times positive, negative times positive gives us a negative. And then I'm just going to say 9, and then the plus or minus from before, plus minus there, gives us a minus. So that will become 9 minus 18. And if we work that out, we can think of the number line again. So another way of thinking about that, which I like to use as an example, is if it was 9 degrees centigrade and it got colder by 18 degrees, then it would actually be -9. There we go. Feels about -9 in this room I'm in as well, coincidentally. Anyway, that's another matter. So question 6. So this is the last one I'm going to do on these. So this is a fairly complicated one. This is yet another of these SUVAT equations, but again, don't worry about that if you've never heard of it. All we're doing is we're substituting into this equation here, or formula for distance, and we've got v is equal to 4, u is equal to -2, and a is equal to -3. So the first step is always just to rewrite this and replace the letters by the numbers. So I've got s equals, and then it's 4 squared minus, and be very careful to put the -2 in a little bracket, and that's squared all over 2 times by -3. So what we're going to do is we're going to work out the indices first of all. So and the BIDMAS, the indices is the first step to do in this really. So we've got 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4. So that's 16. So we've got 16. And I'm just going to keep that minus there. So minus. And I'm going to work out the result of -2 squared. So that's a fairly complicated one to think about. -2 squared. So what that means is something times itself. So -2 times by -2. So timesing it by itself there because of the 2 as the power. And as we said before, if I go back up here to our list of multiplications, if I have a negative number times by another negative number there, so that's here, negative number times by another negative number, then it actually gives us a positive answer. So I'm going to just move that back up. So we can see a negative times a negative will actually give us a positive. So that is going to give me 2 times 2 is 4, and we know that it's a positive. So we've got the minus there already, but the result of squaring this bracket here with a -2 in it is actually to get this 4. So the top line of this fraction becomes 16 take away 4. And I'm now going to work out the bottom line of the fraction. So when you have fractions, actually, it's a good idea to work out the top line and the bottom line separately, and then work out the answer after you've done that. So we've got 2, positive 2 that is there, times by -3. So we'll just do 2 times 3, we know is 6. We've got to work out what the sign is going to be. And a positive times a negative will actually give us a negative. So we're getting there, we're simplifying it. So now I'm just going to simplify the top line there. And I can see that 16 take away 4 is 12 divided by -6. So we've got 12 divided by 6 would actually give us 2. But I need to think about what the sign is going to be there. And the same rule that applies for multiplication is also true for division. So if I have a positive number divided by a positive number, I'll get a positive answer. Positive divided by a negative, I'll get a negative answer. Negative divided by positive would again give me a negative answer. And negative divided by negative would actually give me a positive answer. So what we've got, because a fraction means the top divided by the bottom, is a positive divided by a negative. So the answer is going to be negative. And that's it. That's our answer to that one. So I hope that's been helpful to you in trying to understand the part of algebra that's substitution. And if it has been, then well, you'll consider subscribing to our channel and also giving our video a thumbs up. So thanks for watching.